I feel like the host team is like the Chicago White Sox right now. They,
Well, hey man, the
they
White Sox just I don't know if what they're at, or I'm sure they've lost a game, but they just won four in a row last week.
they did. They sure did. But I'm talking about overall, they're the Chicago White Sox of the Connie Mack World Series. And I don't mean to say that in a negative way. We just don't have the caliber of players, just like the White Sox. They don't have caliber players because they're basically picking these players off the low totem pole. They're just like, hey, we need to put a team on the field. Welcome to Varsity Pulse Radio. Hey, I'm here with a special guest, Coach Mike McGaha. Man, thank you so much for joining me today. I know there's a lot going on in your life as well in mine, but I do know that we both have a passion for the same thing, and that is the Connie Mack World Series. And I know that you have been a part of that, but introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, you bet. Obviously, I'm Mike McGaha. I was associated with the Connie Mack World Series. I went to high school at Farmington High School. I didn't play in the Connie Mack World Series as a player. I was on the runner-up team. Back then, the rules were quite a bit different.
Yeah.
I wasn't a pickup, and so whenever I became a coach, it was always kind of a burning desire of mine to be able to create a situation for the local kids that I didn't have when I grew up. And I'm not talking about in terms of the rules. I'm just talking in terms of the politics in town. And I was just really honestly hell bent on developing the players in my program well enough that I didn't really need to pick anybody up, and not under the delusion that we're going to win the series. I mean, you're not going to compete with the Midland Redskins. No one's going
Right.
to. And the SoCal Renegades getting one last year, honestly, if anybody had bet on them in Vegas, that would have been like, I'm a
2001.
fan. So, I'm a Steelers fan, so I'll throw my own team under the bus. It'd be about whatever the
Right.
same odds are that the Steelers win the Super Bowl. But no, I started my coaching career in Deming, New Mexico, actually at Portales High School, while I was still doing my certificate to teach, and had a friend actually in college, Matt Cecil, that got killed in a car wreck on the way back from San Diego, and he was a little league coach, and he had asked me to fill in for him on a weekend whenever he drove back to San Diego, and that was a weekend he ended up passing away. And honestly, that was the reason I stayed in coaching. I was working at a finance company and had a business degree, and ended up basically feeling like that was my calling. So I ended up quitting that job, going back to school, coached Little League, ended up coaching C team and JV baseball at Portales High School, went from there to be the head baseball coach at Haskell High School and just outside of Abilene, Texas for a couple of years. A friend of mine got the athletic director job, was kind of trying to clean up the athletic programs there. So he brought in, a heavy hitter. That's what I like to say anyway. Yeah, it was my first gig, and I didn't fare so well in that first year. Second year, we did a lot better and handed over the program to the two guys that I hired, and they ended up doing really well with it. Went from there to where did I go from there? I went from there to Farmington High School. I told Donnie Lorette, you mentioned Donnie earlier. I told him I have a 5-year plan. I want to get my master's degree. I want to win a state championship, and I want to be in the dugout in the Connie Mack World Series within the next 5 years. And I think that happened in 3. And then I ended up sticking it out there for 7 because there really wasn't a job open across the state that I was fancied for. And so actually when Dick Laughlin decided he was a year out from retirement, he approached me one day. I mean, on the side, and I wouldn't say in private. It wasn't like a secret conversation. He just said, "Have you ever thought about coming across town?" He told me he felt like they needed somebody from that coaching tree, really to get that program founded the way that Farmington High was founded, in terms of what the groundwork was to be successful year in, year out at the same level that Farmington High School was. And so Ann Gaddis called me in probably 6 months later and asked me if I was interested in applying for the job. And I think there were quite a few applicants, but being a local guy, I think being in town and knowing some of those people and having been in the dugout in the state championship game versus Piedra Vista a couple of times, I think I probably had an advantage that way. And I don't know if people thought I would do a good job or not, but I probably have more confidence in myself than I should. And so I went, took that job, and the rest is history. And so, I took it upon myself. You mentioned Connie Mack World Series. I took it upon myself to make sure that the kids in my program were the nucleus of that roster that was going to qualify for the Connie Mack World Series. And like I mentioned before, early on, Piedra Vista and Farmington High School were sharing kids to the strike zone, and Adam was taking those kids and qualifying them for the series. And there was a bit of a rift there, not to go into detail because it's irrelevant. Me and Adam have since, made amends of all of that. But there was a lot of miscommunication as a head high school coach and what those kids were doing in the off season. And so there was a rift, but I never really tried to destroy that roster. And I felt like Adam was still good for the kids. I just didn't feel like we could see eye to eye on some philosophical things. And so I created Four Corners Baseball on the side and rebuilt what we were doing with the strike zone. And in about 3 years, we were kind of running the show up there. And it got to the point where they wouldn't change the rules ever for the qualifying team. So, we took our show on the road and we went and qualified through the Mountain West qualifier one year, which was cool because Tim Carpenter ended up winning the city tournament. We had two teams in the tournament that were very competitive.
Right.
Anyway, beyond that, obviously, I resigned at Piedra Vista High School in 2019. A lot of people think that I resigned because my son was sick, but that had nothing to do with it. I resigned in June, and Max got sick the following September. And I was actually just going to live in Farmington and run Four Corners Baseball full time. Obviously, God had different plans. And so we ended up spending a year in the hospital. Max beat the odds and by the grace of God, we got to come back and they offered, I rekindled Four Corners Baseball and ramped it up heavy. I think we had 4 rosters that summer, and Steve Avila out of Washington State, and through Mike Diamond somehow, I don't know how that all went. It was irrelevant to me. Those were management things, but they hired me to coach the Frackers Collegiate League team. And so I managed that team, and Sean Trotter managed the 18U Connie Mack team, I believe, and Bryson Campbell managed the 17U Connie Mack team. And then I had some other guys in my Piedra Vista program running my lower level Four Corners teams. But that's kind of how that got restarted after Max got out of the hospital. And then beyond that, it was COVID and the next year, and it's been crazy. So I wasn't exactly the most popular coach with the administration at Piedra Vista High School after Ann Gaddis retired. And so I parted ways with that school, and La Cueva created a job for me to go in there and take the assistant job as a pitching coach. And I've never been blessed more by the opportunity that Anna Lee, the principal there, and Gerard Pineda gave me to be able to get on the field and coach Max after everything that he had been through in a state championship game. He obviously pitched that state championship game in 2021, was the player of the game as a junior. And he probably had a better season his senior year. We just came up short against Sandia in the semifinal, another game that he pitched. We just couldn't score. I think we lost that game 2-1. Anyway, and then after that, after Max graduated, I really thought I would end up coaching the college game, but as our new administration in the federal building is a little bit more expensive to live off of. So I couldn't afford to go to the metropolitan areas and take the salaries that were being offered to me. So, actually the job in Carlsbad came open that I had turned down 2 years before, and the salary was literally $50,000 more than I was making in Albuquerque. So I took it, and this is my second year here, and we're rocking and rolling, man. And now we got Connie Mack World Series rumblings, and I'm 7.5 hours away, and my phone and my email is ringing off the hook about Connie Mack World Series stuff. And I'm like, I'm a long way away, man. It's not my battle. It's not my battle anymore. I know that's the long of it, but you asked the question, so I always give it the long of it.
The biggest thing out of all of this, you got yourself involved with the Connie Mack World Series because you wanted to develop players, and you wanted to choose players that were the best in the region. When you started 4C, like you mentioned, you were taking players the heart of it was PD, Peter Vesta players, but you also pulled from guys from Colorado, and I think you had one guy from Arizona, if I remember right, one year. You don't have to correct me on that.
We had a few different kids from different places. I mean, the kids from Colorado that I had on the roster, other than Gavin Mestis and some of the other kids from Durango High School, the kids that I had on the roster from Colorado were usually pickups from a regional tournament. Once
Okay,
we had already qualified, they weren't natural roster fillers for me, so to speak.
right,
They were pickups. But yeah, we had Mikey Hooper from Hawaii one year. Brett Alexander managed that club. You mentioned Brett before. Brett did a great job for me, and he was basically the manager, right? On the front end of when I my program and got Four Corners going. He was that manager because I was running River Cat baseball, which was my
right,
priority to try to get Piedra Vista baseball back going again. And so,
right,
but then once I started managing the big club again, I mean, we had Treston Schallenberger. He played for us for 4 years, Four Corners baseball. I mean, literally from the time he was 15 until he graduated from high school,
mhm,
from Cleveland High School. I had Drew Price from Roswell Goddard. I had Jadrian Martinez from Belen. I had kids that played for me for multiple years that were part of my program. It wasn't that we
right,
just poached them here and there. We actually brought them in and made them a part of our program and
right,
developed them the way we wanted them. So yes and no. I mean, we did pull kids from the region, but we also pulled them in at a young age and then lived with them as they got older. We didn't replace them and didn't try to go out. I was very unpopular with I'll just say some of the higher ups in AABC for refusing to pick up guys like Alex Bregman and some of those guys when we
right,
qualified for the Connie Mack World Series, because I wasn't going to replace Tyler Wolford or Isaiah Gamboa or whoever was already on my roster with that kid when we had gone and done battle with those kids since
right,
they were 13 years old. I mean, I'm just not going to do that.
right. And speaking of like an Alex Bregman, he was already on the DBAT organization, so good luck pulling away for that.
Well, the year that he came with Dallas, he actually got picked up. He was an ABA kid.
Okay.
Honestly, Alex Bregman's one of the most talented players to ever play baseball in the state of New Mexico. So it wasn't me saying my guys
Yeah.
were better, more talented. It was me saying, no, you know what? I take care of the people who take care of me.
Right. No, it makes perfect sense. And it's rewarded in different ways. It may not be rewarded then, but it's going to be rewarded sometime in your life. And I feel like now that might be the answer. Down there in Carlsbad, you made a good kind of hard change for your family, moving across the state. But man, you have yourself a good opportunity down there, and I think those things always come back to reward the things. I'm not a believer in the whole world things, but I think God rewards you for the positive and the good things that you do for people and the people that you have around you.
Well, if you don't believe that it's God, then you can call it karma.
Nope, that's a four letter word to me, sir. I'm not a big fan of
Yeah,
that word, but
you know what
yes,
I'm
you can
saying.
call it that way.
You know
Absolutely,
what I'm saying.
100%.
For
So,
the naysayers out there, you can call it
right,
karma if you don't believe that it's a God thing.
absolutely. So back to you building your organization. Now there's a few players that in New Mexico right now that have been playing for other organizations. This year, I'm not going to mention names, but he played for the Doolin Dodgers. He's from Albuquerque, and great young man. He has been going to the Doolin Dodgers since he was 12 years old. So he's from Albuquerque, so you know that he's, trying to stay local in the sense of the high school side of things. He doesn't want to move to Texas, but for the summer side of things, he wants to be in an organization that is going to help him get to that next level. That's exactly what I think that the coaches now are going to have to get back into if they want to be competitive in moving forward in the Connie Mack World Series, because either three things are going to have to happen. Either they're going to continue to do what they're doing and have to make the talent, I don't want to say better, but coach them and improve their play on the field from hitting, fielding the whole 9 yards to be competitive, or they're going to have to start recruiting outside of our local area, go down Albuquerque, Cruces, maybe these little Santa Fe schools, or even maybe recruit down there where you are, down in Carlsbad, Roswell, Hobbs. There's a lot of great players throughout the state. Get these players to come in here and develop them as they continue to get older. or they're going to have to know people that have family here that have their athletes that live in, I don't know, say Brad Alexander has an athlete out there that he's, happen to have a relative here in Farmington. That's a legit baseball player. They're going to have to recruit outside of the area. In my opinion, we need to go develop these players, but it's going to be a long season, if you want to say, that we're going to get up to the caliber of players of even like the Doolin's Dodgers or the Mississauga Tigers this year. They're pulling from kids from, 700,000 people. But we can be competitive, but I think that developing a program like that just takes a lot of time. Talk about how you developed those programs to get these kids up here and how it was you got on the same page with those kids and those young men came up here and basically gave up their summers to play ball, with you, Coach.
Ooh. Yeah, it's a mouthful because you crossed over from, if it was a paradigm, there's a lot in that diagram, if you were to draw what you just said, that overlaps, and they're different entities. And I think to answer the question specifically, how would I develop the kids in order to get back on the map? There's a dynamic in Farmington now that didn't exist when I was there. If the people in Farmington really, truly care about the quality of baseball in Farmington, then Piedra Vista High School and Farmington High School need to have unlimited access to the baseball fields in Farmington, New Mexico, pretty much year round until they got to get it ready for the Connie Mack World Series, which they don't do until after the city tournament anyway.
Yep,
but those players can't get on a field. I mean, you're talking about two large schools in terms of New Mexico classifications, and you're trying to stuff them on a field behind Farmington High School's new gym or on the field up at Piedra Vista High School, and they don't practice at Ricketts anymore. They don't get access to Worley every day in the fall like it was at one point. The complex is off limits for this and that and the other. I mean, even when I was there, one of the reasons I resigned and my administration, I felt like, for lack of a better way to say it, they just didn't have the guts to stand up for it. And I was literally having to put in field requests for the baseball field at Piedra Vista High School for my high school team to practice on it because we were conflicting with Yaffle teams and whoever else wanted to practice out there to do things in the fall and even in the spring. And obvious at the time, I mean, I'm a big mouth, so we were winning that battle. But things were going the wrong direction, and I saw it coming a long way off. And the way I put it to the administration when it wasn't a threat. I just told them I have three things I want to discuss with somebody at a table face to face instead of an email that needs to change, or else I probably don't belong here and probably need to check it in. And an hour later, I got an email from an administrator at central office said, "Thanks for your service." And I said, well, there you go. There's that. They don't want to have a conversation about it. They don't want to hear what the problems are and all of that stuff. And I told my players and the parents at Piedra Vista High School, if this matters to you at all, and this bothers you and you feel like this is wrong, then you should probably go in and fight. And I don't really know that anybody did. So then you have a new staff come in and the old guys, me and Sean Trotter retired on the same year, the people who would fight for things and had set, understood the precedences that had been set, prior to us, that old regime the old regime at that point really, in my opinion, died. So that's number one in terms of having a development. Those coaches up there have their hands tied with what they can do in the fall and in the spring in terms of field time. Number one.
Right.
Number two, as far as bringing kids from outside of those programs in, I volunteered basically my time. I took no extra money. And Four Corners Baseball, I think we may have had a profit one year, and it was really because of my camps.
Oh, okay.
At the time that I was up there. Otherwise, me and my wife, you'd usually spend over $2,500 a summer running Four Corners Baseball for the youth in Farmington, just because of the nature of the beast. I mean, you're talking about a guy who ran a full club setup on $750 a kid. multiple
Right.
uniforms, tournament entry fees, hotel rooms, meals per diem for coaches I'm paying
Mm-hmm.
to coach
Pretty
teams
cool.
away from their family and all that stuff. And you're talking about, the Albuquerque Baseball Academy that Alex Bregman played for. I mean, they're charging in the threes, fours, 5,000s of dollars just initiation fees. I have no idea
Right.
what the Midland Redskins or D-Bat or any of those charge. So I'm just putting it out there that way because
Mm-hmm.
the other thing about it is you have to find some guys that are willing to do that. And then, luckily for us, the other side of it is me and Sean both had some some street credit with the other kids and coaches in the state. They knew who we were. So a lot of times inviting those kids to come and play for us, we automatically had respect that maybe a coach that they don't recognize the name of or don't know who he is, even though they're at one of those schools, aren't just necessarily eager to go play for somebody they don't know, or at least know who they are, or don't have a reputation for them in their head or anything like that. So I think that's another thing that has to be established that's missing up there. I I also, when the rules were first made, we talk about a kid going from Albuquerque to play for the Doolins Dodgers. Well, Chase Silseth pitched the championship game of the Connie Mack World Series 3 years in a
Yeah.
row.
Yep.
He was a local kid.
Yep.
And so the locals are mad, or the AABC's mad, or I don't know who's mad, honestly. I mean, I know I can tell you that I could backtrack it probably and give you a bunch of names on how they're all connected, but not knowing who the real pressure points are in the
Right.
thing. But I mean, when Jake McCaslin and Dominic Moreno and those guys came through, it really wasn't common practice. I can only remember a couple of kids, Chris Coleman being one of them. He played for the
Mm-hmm.
Arizona team one year as a qualifier in the Connie
Right.
Mack World Series. Because he got crossways with Coach Lorette, and so during a high school season, and somehow he ended up. I don't actually even know if he was crossways with Coach Lorette. He was crossways with somebody that was running the team that was probably going to be the host at the time, and so he
Oh,
ended
okay.
up taking his show on the road. But I mean, that was a professional. He had the ability to play at the highest level, and the reasons that
Right.
he didn't were his own choices. Jake McCaslin and Dominic Moreno and Shiloh McCall and those
Mm-hmm.
guys, they all stayed home and played with the local team, but that was way before, the Midland Redskins and the Doolin Dodgers. And I was talking about, I think, Chase pitching for the Midland Redskins. And so you mentioned the kid that's leaving Albuquerque. Like when Chase went to go do that, like I absolutely had no problem with it, man. I said, what a great opportunity. What a great opportunity for that kid to get to go play at the highest level and be surrounded by the highest level players. Obviously, there were a lot of people in town that were mad about it and kind of, grumbling under their voice. But what a special opportunity for that kid to be able to do
Absolutely.
that. Honestly, Fletcher Christian is a kid that played for me back in the
Oh,
day that just called me a little while ago and asked me if he could call me about some questions about the Connie Mack World. I'm telling you, man, it's the most bizarre thing. My wife's like, why is everybody calling you? And I was like, I guess just since I was such a, the Connie
you
Mack
made a
World
big
Series
impact.
it was special to me. I longed for the local kids to have the opportunity to play in the Connie Mack World Series without having, at least to minimize through my program. The kids that were in my program always knew that we're not gonna step on you. We're not gonna overstep you. We're not
Right.
gonna overlook you. We're not gonna bring in anybody over you. When we pick guys up, at very worst, you're gonna split time and you're gonna play in the Connie Mack World Series if they make us better and give us a
Right.
chance to win games. But the truth of it
Right.
all there was a situation the year that I came back, and I told you I had the Frackers, and we qualified that year for the Connie Mack
Mm-hmm.
World Series, and
Yep.
we had a couple of situations, and I mean, we had a conversation one day at practice, and the conversation was who was going to play a particular position, and the entire coaching staff was like, well, this kid's better. He hit a home run, and he's better,
Right.
and we need to play him. And honestly, I mean, I looked everybody in the face, and Sean Trotter was looking at me, and Sean did his all famous, very uncomfortable, take my hat off and scratch my head type of thing, and
Right.
and everybody knew that it was a really kind of a touchy question. And I said, I'm going to tell you
Right.
something right now, all of you. It's one thing to go out and win a game, but I said we live here,
Mm-hmm.
and these are our neighbors, and they're our neighbors' kids, and even if we win that one game, are we going to win the Connie Mack World Series? And I would rather not. I would rather not treat our own people in a way that they feel like they're wondering why we made a certain decision. And you know what? The
Right.
coaching staff was like, we understand. And I told Dominic Moreno, who's the fire plug in my staff or was at the time, I told him, it's your job. Find a way
Mm-hmm.
to get him ready to play. And he said,
Right.
okay, your decision, not mine. I think we should play the other kid, but I'll get him ready to play. And we went on about our business, and
Right.
so the question that you asked, I know it was a development question about bringing people in from all over, but that's how I would refer to that. As far
Mm-hmm.
as being competitive now, I think you had a kid on the Doolin Dodgers from Rio Rancho. I think you had a kid on the
Yep.
Doolin Dodgers. We had Dawson Walls catch for the Nashville team. You had
Mm-hmm.
in the past, you had Chase played for the Redskins. You have a kid at Piedra Vista now that I think dabbles with the Redskins. I think there was another kid, the Nelson kid, played with the Doolin's Dodgers, I think, who
Mm-hmm.
was a Farmington kid and would be considered a local. I mean, we're talking about a lot of kids that are very
Right.
talented that could make the host team a lot more competitive, but they have a better opportunity for their future to go play
Yeah.
with those other clubs. And so the dynamics of what is going on in Farmington, New Mexico and what was going on in Farmington, New Mexico are so very different. The times are different. I mean, kids, the roster attainability is harder than ever. And no
Right.
offense, but if I was still running the Piedra Vista River Cats rather than, using the programs that are running or up there, if they are playing for the Piedra Vista River Cats as opposed to the Midland Redskins, they're not getting nearly the same exposure or
Mm-hmm.
significant offers that the kids that would even be backups on a Redskins or a Dodgers or a
Right.
SoCal Renegades roster. Those kids are getting more offers at bigger, better schools than they would if they were playing for the Piedra Vista River Cats, whatever that meant. So there was never the idea that we were going to win the Connie Mack World Series. It was just the idea that what we put on the field, we're going to be proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple of years where in the very early years of Four Corners baseball qualifying, I think it was maybe 2015, like Tyler and Philip and Gunnar Archuleta's class of kids.
Mm-hmm.
We won a state championship with those kids, but in 2015, that Illinois team, that land and gravel team from Illinois that got to the championship game that could really swing it, beat us like 19 runs or something like that. And that was embarrassing and
Yeah.
that was hard. But the year that I'm talking about post COVID, we go 2 in a barbecue, but we get walked off by Florida in 8 innings, and we get walked off by Dallas in 8 innings. And I
Right.
mean, we gave them all they could handle. And if that would get, and I read, I think, or I heard that one of the big pressures for the AABC is that it's televised. Well, I can tell you
Yeah.
this, at least that team of mine in that year, if you were watching that game on TV and you were somewhere else, you weren't sitting there going, that's the host team. You're going, dang, like you better be good if you get in this thing.
Right.
Like everybody's pretty good, even the teams that are losing 2 games. Now I can't speak for the teams that are playing in it now because I'm not there and I don't have a
Right.
dog in the race and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, it's so far from my mind until a couple of people reached out to me and said, what do you think? Are you going to try to make another run at this thing? And I'll be honest with you, man, I'm torn about it. Like I really haven't made 100%
And it's fair.
decision
Right.
because I'm very partial to the local product, but I also don't think that it's the same product. So
It's not. It's not.
I'm a double-edged sword. And I see a lot of comments from people on newspaper articles and Facebook comments and the delusion that if you take an all-star team from the Four
Mm-hmm.
Corners that you can be competitive it's just not real. It's not a real thing. Like, can it happen? Yeah, we've proven it. Is that
Mm-hmm.
the norm? Nah, it ain't gonna happen,
No.
man. I mean, the Albuquerque Baseball Academy qualified through the Mountain West region, and then the host team
Yep.
beat them. Obviously, it was an arm they picked up, but that just goes to show you that, like, if you really think you're going to be super competitive in the Connie Mack World Series year in and year out, then it's one roster from the entire state, not a tournament of 5 rosters from parts of the state.
Right.
Like, it's just not. I mean, to me, honestly, I won't even go into the politics of how abrasive this comment will come across to most people. But I mean, to me, I think what Richard Neely, his decision to understand the spirit and the idea of making the host team more competitive, but really what you did is you opened the door for the Albuquerque Baseball Academy to be the host every year, because they pull from the largest metropolitan area in the state. They've already monopolized the majority of the arm talent in the state. And really, to be honest with you, they've already proven that even they are going to come in there and probably most likely go 2 in a barbecue. And they've already proven that a couple of times. So unless you take, I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. The Southwest Sticks best kid from New Mexico, and put them on that roster, and the Duke City's best kids, and the Four Corners best kids, and the 505 Panthers best kid, and the Scorts best kid, and whoever has a team. If you took all of the very best kids and put them on that roster, you still have to play that roster multiple games in order to create some solidarity, some chemistry, some understanding. The other side of it too is there's a trick. I mean, the Connie Mack World Series is different than a lot of other tournaments, and there's things that the coaches that coach those teams don't understand. 2-1 counts in the Connie Mack World Series are breaking ball counts. People don't teach these things to their players, and so the IQ of the game in that tournament is completely different. And I mean, I think those are the things that have given the teams from the past that have been somewhat competitive. If you look at who the managers of those programs were and the programs that those kids came out of, they were at least mentally prepared for those things. I know that that's probably a knock on a lot of different people. It's not intended to be. It's just me and 27 years of experience knowing that if you get in the Connie Mack World Series, it's for blood, and it doesn't matter how much you have. It's going to spill fast if you get cut open.
So you were talking about caliber of play and how – so this year, I don't know if you listened to the radio, the KSJE, the games or anything on the radio, where we're trying to do like the history and the facts and that kind of stuff of the World Series. So that was my job, was to find a lot of the historical stuff and or just cool information, cool facts about this year's tournament. So this year – there was 279 players that came to the World Series. 209 of them already signed to go to college.
Well, so as you say that, there was a year that I had a team in the Connie Mack World Series, and we were set to play the Florida Legends, or we thought we were going to play them, and it ended up materializing. We ended up playing the other team because I don't know. I think they actually got beat, and we were waiting to play those. That was a first round game, and we were in that past that first play in, and that was before pool play, and their shortstop got drafted, and they flew him out, and they flew another one in. The host team can't do that.
No, we can't.
The host team can't do that. I took you off of the subject about what you were going to say. I mean, those dynamics are real, and those are Connie Mack World Series stories that people don't consider whenever you try to talk about who's competitive and who's not.
Yeah. Here's a prime example of this year. Now, there were several teams, but the one that I'm going to talk about is the Mississauga Tigers. So they're from Canada, so they're a long ways away. Well, there was Team USA and there was Team Canada. There was, of course, the Olympics and all that kind of stuff going on, and the stuff behind the scenes of all of that. So a couple teams lost players to Team USA on the USA side. Well, the Mississauga Tigers lost 6 players, and they were all leaving, and there was 9 total players leaving. 6 of them were going to, I believe, Team Canada, and the other 3 were going to this huge nationals tournament that they play up there in Canada. So they flew them away, flew 6 or 7 new players back in, and they're playing with a new team. They lose that next game, so they flew these kids in for one game, but if the host team can't do that, we'll never be able to do that. That's just one example. I mean, I could tell you the Doolan's Dodgers had a kid come in the last second. Tulsa Stanlaw had a kid come in last second, and they keep
there's a conflict. I don't know when the Aflac games are now, but there's a lot of guys that won't pitch if they're leading
Hmm.
up to another event. And I know that
Right.
we overlap with the area code games. And so
Yep.
a lot of kids opt to go to
That was a
that
big
because it's
thing.
more of a showcase, and you're not waiting to play. You're not, it's not one
Right.
game a day for 11 days and all that stuff. It's all rammed into one weekend. They can knock out their exposure. And if their team happens to
Hmm.
still be playing, they can come back, which gives them a boost. But at the same time, again, the host team never is going to have that.
Nope. Never.
I just don't know. We could go on, and as topics come
Right.
up, I can give you another reason why the host team, no matter if it's an all New Mexico team or it's an all Four Corners region team or what, like we're just not going to have that firepower. We're not going to. Can we bring in kids from the West Coast and California and do whatever? Absolutely. But kind of a budget is going to be required. Let's say Mike McGaha puts Four Corners baseball back together, and I have two high school coaches at high-powered high schools in Arizona that one of them runs a club and the other one does lessons out of a facility, and they have access to these high-end kids.
Hmm.
Okay? And then we go out and we pull from the prime program that I coached 2 summers ago and had 3 or 4 Division I kids come out of that program. And we pull them all
Right.
together and we say, all right, we're going to show up and we're going to play in this tournament over here in Colorado at Pueblo because it's a guaranteed 5-game pool play, even though there's
Right.
nothing at stake, right? In the middle of Colorado
Yep.
where there's no airport or whatever. And it's really the only event that is a guaranteed enough playing time in order to be able to get a team to gel in a very short amount of period of time. How many kids from Arizona are going to go to Pueblo, Colorado, and then stay there for another week and a half to play in the Colorado qualifier, which is what happened to us a couple of years ago? So you go and you stomp everybody in this other tournament because you have the hammers, but then they're tired and they have another event in 2 weeks. So they're going to go home and save up their money and go to that because traveling for summer baseball is very expensive. Right?
Totally.
So if I put that together, that program that I just mentioned you together, and try to just have the tournament in Pueblo, Colorado, and then take that team to Farmington, New Mexico, again, what are they going to do? Fly to Albuquerque and drive to Farmington? Or are they going to drive in to Farmington and stay for 4 or 5 nights in hotels and do what?
Mhm.
And you know what people are going to say? Well, that's what everybody else across the country does. And I'm going to say, okay, well, the Midland Redskins have dorms, and they have reputation. I mean, when Hosmer is a first rounder, and if I can't remember correctly, might have been the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and he's choosing to stay with the Midland Redskins for the entirety of the Connie Mack World Series prior to the new USA baseball rules changing and those kids having to show up if they sign in June. That was
Right.
before that, which is another factor people don't understand about roster formations for the Connie Mack World Series. He chose to stay until the end of the Connie Mack World Series as opposed to going ahead and taking his gazillion dollars and going and playing for the
Hmm.
Kansas City Royals right then because it's the Midland Redskins. Do you think Hosmer stays in place for Four Corners baseball if he's a first rounder as opposed to taking the millions? No, but it's the Midland Redskins. Like, I'm not walking
Yeah.
out on the Midland Redskins. It's never going to be that way for the host team. It doesn't matter. The ABA, Duke City, Four Corners, no matter who runs that program, is never going to have the same street credit that the old Dallas Mustangs had, that the old East
Yep.
Cobb Yankees have, that Coach Beavers is like, I'm not doing this automatic bid stuff, and we're not doing it anymore, and so we're not coming anymore. It's too expensive and all that stuff. I mean, I've heard all the stories about it, whether they're half-truths or not. I mean, there's a lot to it, right? There's a lot of politics involved with it. The baseball people, quite frankly, they're either riding the lightning if it benefits them or they're fighting if it doesn't. And so I
Yeah.
think as the local host team, we're fighting,
And we're always going to have to because, like you said, we don't have the means to do it unless we get some millionaire that decides to, you know what, this is my dream. I'm going to open up this organization and we're going to recruit players from all across the country. Man, I did a podcast about the Midland Redskins, and the way it originally started and what it is now, they still do the same stuff. They
Oh, yeah.
develop their players
Oh,
from
yeah.
12 years old and up, actually 10 years old and up. They develop them all the way through, and they have organizations broken up saying, hey, this new team is your nationals team. We're going to go across the country and play in these legit tournaments, these five totals, these perfect games. And what happens is you become loyal to this organization because
The Midland Redskins are the gold standard in every way. Like they're a class act like you're never going to hear me say anything negative about the Midland Redskins
nope.
for Chase Silseth or anybody else that has a chance to go play on that roster, man, I'll donate. If he was on my roster, and I mean, I'll help you financially if you need that. Like, I think that's one of the greatest experiences against anybody, but I also know we can't compete with it. And so unless the AABC came in and said, you know what, which Jake McCaslin didn't go anywhere, but we're not going to let the Dallas Mustangs offer Jake McCaslin. We're going to say that the local kids have to play for the local team. Well, then that kind of hurts the local kid too. It helps the local team. It helps the local team because I'll tell you the year that Chase went and played for the Redskins, or two of those years, I mean, Four Corners baseball was in a position to win some games. I mean, we had some really good players on those teams had we just even had that one more arm, you know. I mean, obviously, if he was good enough to pitch in the championship game for the Midland Redskins, he was dang sure good enough to pitch for me in game one of the series to give us a chance to win.
In game one, right. Doing the win call right at the beginning of the tournament. If you earned your way onto the Midland Redskins, and he did, good God, phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Top 10 in strikeouts in the state of New Mexico, and a great kid, just a great young man, respectful. He loves the game. He loves Farmington still. Of course, he comes back and
Absolutely.
in off season and helps. Just fantastic, fantastic family, parents, the whole nine yards. So if you do get the opportunity of any athlete to play for an organization like Midland Redskins, I would say you're crazy not to take up the opportunity. And there's nothing against anything about one of the host teams. But if you're trying to move on to the next level, exposure, especially now, as you know, man, with social media and all the other things that go on, you need to have that exposure because
It's really not even exposure anymore, boss. Like, honestly, Travis, it's not even exposure anymore. With the new NIL rules, with the portal, with the COVID carryovers and all of that stuff, it really exposure doesn't matter. But if you're good enough to play for the Midland Redskins, just like I just said about Chase, and let's say you're New Mexico State, or let's use an SEC school like Kentucky, who showed up last year big last year, right? If you play for the Midland Redskins, I bet the coaching staff has a direct cell phone communication with one of the coaches with the Midland Redskins, because if you're on that roster, you're good enough to play at Kentucky. It's just going to be an assumed fact, right? So it's almost as good. Playing for the Midland Redskins in the summer is almost as good as transferring from the University of Tennessee to Kentucky.
It honestly is. And I'm looking at their roster from this. Yeah, and I'm looking at their roster for this year. They have 24 players on their team. They have 6 that are not going to D1. Somewhere across
the country. So if you look at Four Corners baseball, the majority of all of our D1 guys were JUCO bandits to start with, and the ones that weren't were more mid-major type kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bishop Gorman, they have 3 players from Bishop Gorman, and they're going to USC, Cal State Northridge. And then you have OU. You have 2 players going to OU. The only player on their team that is not committed is a 16-year-old from Hawaii, Judah Oda. And they picked him up because Hawaii always goes up to their big tournament they have up there in Cincinnati. And he hit like 600 during the tournament up there. And they're like, yeah, we want you on our team. And
right.
Heck,
I mean, I took great pride in the fact that if you would take Four Corners roster year in and year out, and you go back and look at those rosters and you see where those kids were in high school, where we sent them out of high school or out of Four Corners baseball, and where they ended up either now or, I mean, some of them are still playing. I mean, Gavin Nestis is at Gonzaga. Rhett Stokes is at University of Nebraska. Chase played for the Redskins, but he played for me in high school and any other tournament that he didn't play for the Redskins. I mean, he's in the big leagues. I mean, Jack Pineda was on one of our Connie Mack rosters. He's playing in the Royals organization. I mean, You look at Tyler Richley, pitched at Ball State, had a great career. I
Right.
mean, and those were cornerstones of our program, and the locals still were angry. But what kind of a roster can we possibly put together? I mean, Dalen Pickford, Cal State Fullerton, Nate Swartz, Washington State, Cody McGaha, played 4 years of college baseball, Wolford, Oklahoma State, Trent Corrali
Right.
led his league in home runs for most of the year last year, if not the whole year. I mean, we had kids get drafted too from small towns, from New Mexico and different places. That we just went out and found kids and developed them in our program. And our program was developmental. So even though they weren't necessarily like ready to play for the Midland Redskins at that point, they still had their opportunity down the road because of the roadmap that I feel like we developed for our kids. It made them better. And so for me, that's why I'm saying all the things that I'm saying, knowing how much work went into that, how much time you had to spend, the battles that you had to spend on the phone and with people who just didn't like you because they thought you were a jerk, when really all it was I'm fighting for my kids no matter what. Whether that's field time, college scholarships, whatever. I'm gonna brag on them. I'm gonna run my mouth and say we're better than we are. I want people to notice us, because if they notice us, now it's pressure on the kids. If they fail, they're not as good as he says they are. But if they're good, they're like, dang, maybe there's something to it. And look, I mean, we have a lot of kids go on and do a lot of great things, and I'm proud of that. But you're not there right now. That neighborhood up there is not there right now. Well, we've already have some of the reasons why it's not even some of the reasons that you're like they're just automatic stop signs, roadblocks that are out of the hands of the coaches. I can't speak for the job that they're doing, but I do know the roadblocks that were coming when I was there. And so I'll tell you this, people have asked me, would you ever go back to Farmington if one of those schools came open? And my exact comment's the same every time. You know what? When I went to Piedra Vista, I laid it out there. I said, I'm not having parent meetings. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm not whatever. I was like, this is the way it's going to be. If that's not the way it's going to be supported, then I'm not doing it. I'm not your guy. And then Gaddis said, all of those things will be done. Well, then she left, and those things were no longer that way anymore. So it was time for me to leave. And so if I was ever to go back up there, I mean, it would point blank be to the school administration, like, if I don't have access to that field all year long because the city's just, I don't know what they're doing with it. They're just letting it rest. What does that even mean? Letting it rest, like, so that the AABC can use it. Well, then I'm not interested in a high school job up there, because those kids that are in that school that should be on that field whenever it's resting, now that you're forcing the kids to rest. And there's not a lot of turf fields around that you can go out in the four corners. I mean, in 2011, we didn't have a baseball practice on the field until March the 13th because we were under snow and ice. All we did was throw bullpens inside and take BP. That was Dominic Moreno's senior year, Dylan Bebo and that group of kids. And people don't understand the dynamics of that up there. And so if you're going to be super competitive every year, you better have a really good plan on how to develop your kids. And again, I don't have any clue what type of job the high school coaches do, but I know that their staffs aren't as large as mine was, or the one that Sean had was. I know that the experience level on those staffs is nowhere close to the experience level of the staffs that I had put together. I mean, we had 3-4 guys every year that could be head high school coaches anywhere in the state, all on one staff, both sides of town. And I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think that the dynamics of that are affected by the things that we've talked about that are out of our control.
Why get involved when you can't, you don't have the free reins like you should do an organization to do a high school team successfully. I also think that the talent is not there like it was a few years ago. Now, there are a few good players, J.W. Bayless's, Danny Hagstrom with Farmington. There's a handful of players. But, man, 10 years ago, the handful of players, you look at PV's roster and 6 of them were going somewhere. Any moment of their,
well, in 2000,
they're going to play somewhere.
Yeah, 2018, when Brendan Anderson gets injured, Brendan ended up signing a Division I deal. Chase signed a Division I deal. Nate Swartz signed a Division I deal. Alex Kuhn pitched 4 years in college baseball. My son played 4 years of college baseball. Trent Corrali played 4 years of college baseball. Tyler Wolfert played 4 years of college baseball. I could keep going. That roster was full, and we lost the state championship to La Cueva, who was also full of college players. You really had to do something special to get to that point at that time. Right. And we really had, people say, well, you had dudes. We did, but we built them. I mean, and I didn't have roadblocks. I had access to the field all the time. Like, I had guys showing up. I had Mike Diamond and Richard Neely show up to my field while I'm out on Piedra Vista's baseball field for free, rebuilding the mound in the summer, covered with mud. And they came out there to talk to me because they thought that I wasn't supporting their program, even though I had 6 teams in the AABC, and I was pretty much the only guy in town supporting their program. And I don't know why they thought that I wasn't, other than the fact that I have I don't really say the most popular things, but otherwise, if you just look on paper, they had every one of my kids from 12 years old through 18 years old in the program. But the point is we're on the field. We went to the weight room every day in the summer. I ran a Four Corners camp for kids under 7th grade all summer long for my entire time at Piedra Vista. My players coached them. There's a ton of development that's not just hitting ground balls and taking hacks in a cage and throwing bullpens that came with that. Mentor programs, like grooming kids to play in my program from the time that they're 10 years old in the community, which was also not a popular thing with the people from Farmington High who I was competing with and all of that stuff. But you know what? I just went to work every day. Like, we're going to win. Somehow, some way, we're going to figure out. And that was my attitude. And I don't know how you get back to that up there, but unless you do, more things
someone's got to change.
More things like what's happening with AABC is going to happen.
Right. And I don't blame, like you said at the beginning of this, I don't blame Richard Neely for doing this. He wants a competitive team, but at the same time, it's a catch-22. You want a better team, but there's going to be sacrifices going to have to be made for local. Either they're going to have to get better, but that's going to take years to get better because you're developing these players to come up, and they're not here yet. I mean, there's a lot of good athletes right now at the junior class right now for both Farmington and PB. There's a lot of great athletes. Don't get me wrong, but they're not at that level of what we talked about earlier with those kids. They're just not there. I mean, probably the highest one would be J.W. Bayless. I mean, that kid is, he's a little 5'10", 100. I don't know.
He pitched for me in the.
Oh yeah,
He pitched for me 2 weeks ago at the Four Corner Showdown Series. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm sure he did well.
Oh, he did.
He's a little kid.
Player of the year.
Yeah, he's a baller. But he's not throwing 93, 94, 95. He's throwing 86, 88, 89. I know. But what I'm saying is we have nobody here that's even close to that caliber yet, or as the maybe even say the accuracy or the bulldog attitude as JW is. Man, that guy you throw him a bases loaded, games on the freaking line, put that kid in there, he'll get you out of the inning. He's just that kid, and I think you can develop a kid physically and as much as you can mentally, but there's a special person that can get onto that next level. You can coach it all you want, but until they figure it out in your mind and believe in yourself that you can go through any situation, it's tough to get there. And I think Shutterfree captured all the pictures action at the Connie Mack World Series. From weddings to adventures, get your perfect photo package today. Visit shutterfreak.com for stunning moments.
We call it the edge. And I mean, again, part of my development program is like teaching kids how to have the edge. And I had an acronym for it at one point, and I don't even want to try to quote it because it was the year that Max got sick that I actually coined it and did a bunch of stuff. And so, and I'm just saying it because I can't remember it specifically. EDGE, and it was an acronym for what we were going to do to get them to the point where they had that, what you're talking about. Like, I could turn down my bench and go, I've got 4 guys sitting over here that could start for anybody else. And if I put them in, they're going to get it done because they got the edge. I get it. I'm going to comment on the comment that what you said about Richard, and you can't blame him for his decision to do this. You can't blame you can't blame him, because if you just look at that comment in general, blaming him would be that that's his agenda for himself. And really, it doesn't benefit him personally in any way, go against the locals. But because of the TV deals and because of the pressure that he gets from the programs outside of Farmington, I've heard it in the stands when I'm sitting in Scout Row. It's like, well, they're playing the host team, so they're not throwing anybody, because if they win, then they're going to have whoever. And so the host team is pretty much a cakewalk game from those bigger programs on the first round. And so the other programs that might have to play that team are mad, because now that team doesn't actually have to throw an arm against them. And so it becomes something about learning about how to play in the Connie Mack World Series if you're a coach with experience in it. And that's one of the things that I always heard that was complained about. And that's actually probably true most of the time. However, the other side of it is Richard lives in Farmington, and his family lives in Farmington, and he's from Farmington. And it's unfortunate for him that the national office is in Farmington, because it is the national office. It's not the FABC office. But I said it when I talked to Bortstein the other night. Those people open their homes. Those people feed those kids. Those people spend thousands of dollars supporting that event. Those people buy thousands of dollars of season tickets for those chairs that half of them don't even go to. A lot of times they give those tickets away to other people who go, because they wouldn't be able to afford them otherwise. And the restaurants in town and the car dealerships in town and all the people in town that support that event, like, those are the people that take care of Richard. And so to me, I don't know who the people are, but if it's Nate Duckett has a kid, I think, that plays baseball. I think what's the guy at the GM at the Ford lot? Maybe he's still there, not there. Clugston, Matt, does he have a kid that played or is coming through or something? I mean, we're talking about people in the community who are linked to baseball in some way, and those people support that event. And now you're basically pulling the rug out from under those people's kids, and those people been supporting that event for over a decade in hopes of someday their kid having the same opportunity that the locals that came before them do. To me, I just don't necessarily know that, regardless of the external pressure, that I'd pull the plug on the locals. I mean, if I'm him, but I'm not. It's irrelevant to me. I don't live there, so I'm not fighting for it. But I can assure you that if I was living there, I wouldn't be sitting on my hands. I wouldn't be biting my tongue.
No, something's got to be said. And go back a little bit when you're talking about a team facing the host team. They're not going to waste an arm for them. And I hate to say this, because I played in '99. So I played for the Rebels, and we did really well. We won our first two games, and then we went up against this team from Washington and ended up losing the game 16-15 in the bottom of the ninth. So a hard loss, and then we played the East Coast Yankees the next day, get our butts smacked around, and we lost 18-2. But I'll tell you what, we had a team that was mostly Farmington high school players. I played in Aztec. I was picked up, but it was a different game and a different everything then. It's kind of off subject, but at the same time, we need to. I feel like the host team is like the Chicago White Sox right now. Hey man, the White Sox just, I don't know what they're at, or I'm sure they've lost a game, but they just won 4 in a row. Sweet. They did. They sure did. But I'm talking about overall, they're the Chicago White Sox of the Connie Mack World Series. And I don't mean to say that in a negative way. We just don't have the caliber of players, just like the White Sox. They don't have caliber players because they're basically picking these players off the low totem pole. They're just like, hey, we need to put a team on the field. I'm gonna twist it on you before you finish the comment. Isn't there a Chicago White Sox of any and every Connie Mack World Series, no matter what the caliber of the teams are that are going to be in it? True. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I can twist this argument any which way you want to spend it,
I mean, the Chicago White Sox aren't getting kicked out of the MLB because they're the Chicago White
No,
Sox right now.
true that. True that.
And
Absolutely.
if you kill the
Absolutely agree.
local team and you put a New Mexico team in it, and the New Mexico team goes and wins 2 out of their 4 games, then everybody's
We're
going
in
to
the
be
same
like,
boat.
see it. So if the Dallas Tigers go to in a barbecue and get their butt waxed, are they going to get kicked out next year and be forced to make a different kind of a roster?
No.
I'm
Nope.
just
I
saying,
agree
I'm
with
just
you.
saying it, like, no matter
No.
what you do, somebody's going to
Hmm.
be the Chicago White Sox of the Connie Mack World
Yep.
Series. And if it's the
Absolutely.
host team every year, and that's just what the tradition of it is, then who cares? So be it. Those
So
kids
be it.
grow up in that community. That's their field. Those are
Hmm.
their high schools. The community puts that event on, not the AABC, the community. Let them
Hmm.
have their event. That's my opinion.
Man. Nope. I'm not argue with you at all on that. I played in. I love the Connie Mack World Series. I
I
wanted teams
didn't
to
play in it,
succeed.
and that's why I'm so animate about
Fair enough. Fair enough. I just know that he's Richard Neely says that it's going to be trial per se. That's not exactly his words, but for a few years and to
it. That
see
it could
how
change. I
see
saw
what
that.
happens. Yeah, it could change. Okay, well that leaves the door open for either him making everybody feel less uneasy about it because
Travis,
we're just
like
going to
I
do this
just
for a
told
couple
you,
years.
I said what I said, but I have no. Me sitting in Carlsbad, New Mexico with what I'm doing in my life right now and what my outlook on the world is and where I'm going beyond Carlsbad
Hmm.
High School, after Carlsbad High School, to be honest with you, man, I haven't thought, other than you calling me and the couple of telephone calls that I've been received while I've been on the phone with you right now, and some of the people that have called me over the last couple of weeks, when they call me and I have these conversations with them, obviously I love talking about baseball more than anything in the whole wide world, and especially the Connie Mack World Series. And I'm actually, what's the word? It's endearing to know that there's still a lot of people out there that remember the effort that I made to do a good job to make that event, to make that a special for the local kids. And so it's endearing to me. It's a, people
Right.
remembering that. And I guess that's the reason they're calling me. But at the same time, I said what I said about Richard and not who cares and the White
Hmm.
Sox and all that stuff. Honestly, I don't care who's in there, who the host team is. I mean, and to be
Fair enough.
honest, if I decide to make another run at it, I'm more than happy to go up there and I don't feel guilty about it one bit. So I'm not trying to
Right.
say like, this is the way it should be and I'm against this and for
Right.
this. I'm
Right.
just saying that there's two people would be upset and the reasons why they should fight for it. And then you have to understand why the other decision was made and why it could potentially be better. Now, for the local fan, other than the people who have kids, maybe it'll be more fun to root for Alex Bregman if he was on the
Right.
if he was on the Mexico team. I don't know.
Well, and honestly, I think I don't know, maybe not 90, 80% of the fans don't even have a clue who's on, say, like this year, the Frackers. They don't know where they're from. They just know that, oh, they're the local team. They won the host tournament, and cool, they're representing us this year. And all the Frackers didn't have a good outing at all. They went 0-5, and then you feel this. You feel this White Sox mood, and you're like, oh, well, we're not surprised they lost, 2 in a row in bracket play. And I feel like that's kind of the idea of what Mr. Neely wants is to get out of the rut of the host team and to hopefully be more competitive. I get it. I totally get what he's doing as the AABC side of things. I get it. On the local side, like you said, I feel like it's hurting these kids. I mean, come on, I want my son to play in the World Series just like me.
Right.
I was fortunate enough where I got picked up by a team that we were by far the best team in this area. In fact, I think we played 75 games that year, and we were like 67-9, or I don't know what it was. We were really good, and we went to Dallas, and we went to Phoenix, and all these other tournaments. And of course, it's a lot different baseball now than it is today, or sorry, than it is now. And I just wish that he could experience that, and he might, but his chances got a whole lot less now. And that's what is me as a parent. It bothers me, but me as a baseball fan, I want to see I want to see the best team on the field, period. I don't give a crap where they're from, but at the same time, I
Right.
want to say that these kids are from Farmington. And that's my personal opinion. I want to be the
That's my
best team.
point. I agree.
Yeah.
That's my point. I mean, 100%. I don't. I'd be lying if I didn't agree with that 100%. Like, I don't. if I went to the World Series right now, I wouldn't be disgusted watching Team New Mexico play if not a single kid on the field was from Farmington. I mean, if that's who won and that's who the host was and all that stuff, as a baseball guy, I'm just there to watch a good baseball game. I don't really care. On the other hand, there's a lot of people in Farmington, New Mexico that really aren't. I mean, I was a baseball coach before I had children. I mean,
Right.
I didn't get into baseball because I had kids. I didn't coach
Right.
because my children
Me
played
too.
baseball. Like
Mhm.
my kids played baseball because I was a baseball coach.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I mean, so the majority of the people that you're talking about in the community who are upset about the local team not being the host are people who are vested because of their kids, not because they're vested
Right.
in baseball. And so
Agreed.
that's where the detachment happens, right? Because I sat in
Mhm.
those FABC meetings for years, and even the FABC used to get mad at me. And Martin Bayless was the president, I think, at the
Mhm.
time. But they would always come up with these. I'm going to use the word arbitrary rules, and they would ask, what everybody thought about them. And of course, at that time and in those meetings, I wouldn't speak up unless asked, Coach, what do you think? And then, of course, I usually never agreed and thought, like, this is a dumb rule and I don't know why you're making it. Like, just have rules to
Right.
have rules. And, some mom, I remember one year was mad because my team had fancy hats and her team had the local stock city league issued hat. And I was like, we're seriously here talking about making rules against what kind of hats you can
That's
wear
you
in the
can have.
games.
Yeah.
Like, I
That's
mean,
another
we're like,
issue.
it's just like stuff, just arbitrary stuff. And so, I would speak up when asked, but at the same time, like the rules that we were playing by until Brad Campbell came in and made a proposal that everybody was on board with about changing the rules and allowing the local team to have the same rules as everybody else.
Hmm.
And then a person like me who capitalized on that now was able to bring in the best team.
Right.
Ironically, the AABC was mad because I was monopolizing the situation.
Figured out, right?
You couldn't win. Like you just couldn't win.
No.
If you were me, you just couldn't win. And I mean,
Right.
obviously I slept perfectly well at night and,
Right. You're like,
chuckled about
whatever.
it and whatever and went on about my business. But I'm just saying, like you can't make anybody, it doesn't matter what Richard decides. 50% of the people are going to be mad.
Yeah. There's
And
never going to
so,
be
and
a
so
perfectly right decision.
the way I was, and the comment that I was going to tell you that I made to Martin Bayless and Richard Neely and Mike Diamond sitting at their table in their office downtown one time is, I don't care what you do. I'm not changing anything I do. Like AABC
Yeah.
doesn't affect my baseball career other than how we approach it
Right.
from the summer standpoint, what schedule we're going to make and what kids we're going to ask and all that. Otherwise, Piedra Vista baseball is my priority. Four Corners baseball
Right.
is part of the development for that. And if those
Mm-hmm.
kids can benefit from it, then so be it. But I mean,
You would win.
honestly, I mean, summer league baseball, I mean, I've used the term before, but I mean, when your kid absolutely smacks one in the cage and you're like, dude, if that was a real game, that would have been a home run. Well, I call those
Mm-hmm.
cage bombs. I call those
Right.
cage bombs. And summer league baseball is cage bombs. Like that's what it is.
Makes sense.
It's for fun. It's
Mm-hmm.
for development. The way my attitude was is it doesn't matter what your rules are. It doesn't matter what you think of me. It doesn't matter how
Right.
hard you're going to try to make things on me. We are going to continue to develop our kids this way. And we're just going to find a way around it. And that's what we're going to
Right.
do.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a popular attitude, but we did it anyway.
But it's not going to be popular because it's not going to benefit a certain group of people, a certain group of athletes, student athletes that are coming through because they're not a part of it. And a lot of it, when you have a winning program, as you know, there's a lot of jealousy that goes on. Like, why are these guys winning? Why are these guys? They must be cheating or they must be doing this or you name it. They don't like winning programs, as you know, right? And the more you win, the more you're hated. I'll tell you what, the Midland Redskins, in my opinion, are the New York Yankees of the World Series.
Yeah,
Either you love them or you hate them.
they're absolutely hated for the right reasons. And I used to say that
Absolutely.
when people hated us, I was like, they
Yep.
hate us for the right reasons. I mean,
Yep.
we're not cheating. We're
No.
just winning, like
Right.
it is what it is. Like,
for.
Our deck is stacked and theirs is not. I can understand their math. Like,
You're the house, and they're the gambler coming in trying to figure things out. And
yeah, and
you're right.
obviously
Yeah,
and obviously that was relative because it's not like Four Corners
right,
baseball went to the Connie Mack World Series and lit things up. We were very
right.
competitive for at least 3 of the 5 years or so that we had qualified. We were very competitive in
Right.
close games, and then obviously when pool play came about, we were even more competitive. We would just run out of arms because of pool play. Again, we
Right.
can't fly guys in. We don't have the reputation to bring West Coast, East Coast, Midwest kids and put them all on our roster and then afford to bring them in. Like, we just don't
Yeah.
have those connections. And on
Well,
top of
not.
that, this staff of 5 guys is what got us here. So that's what we're going to try to get through this with. And that's not a popular idea because it's going to run out, and we know it's going to run out, but we're going to live with
Yep.
it. We're going to smile about it because we're giving them the opportunity that I was there. And that was my goal to give.
And you left everything on the field. You're never going to ask for more than that. If you leave everything on the field, man, the other team it could have been better. But if you leave everything on the field, that doesn't matter.
Believe me, at that point in time, it was so frustrating that if we could have cheated and won some Connie Mack World Series games, I might have tried.
Mike, I know you mentioned that you haven't really given it much thought, but if you do put together a team, are you just going to try to do a local thing down there and to
No,
show that, hey,
no, no. I'll
I'm not putting your feet
obviously
to the fire at all?
no. I'm trying to think about how to put it together concisely because obviously I've already talked way too much. The nucleus of probably what I would try to do would be the seniors from my high school here at Carlsbad High School, not
Okay,
because
makes
they're the
sense.
most talented players necessarily that I could go out and get, but they're the most familiar with me.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of what people say, like, that's a huge, important thing that matters in the Connie Mack World Series. And honestly, we couldn't have been nearly as competitive as we were in some of those years had those kids not played together and played for me because we have a lot of
Right.
verbals. There's like anything that comes out of my mouth in the third base box. If I don't say anything,
Means
there's
something.
nothing. If I say something, like, you'll rarely see me giving signs.
Right.
It's
Right.
in my vocabulary. The signs are in my vocabulary. And
Mm-hmm.
so if those kids don't understand the timing of those things, they don't understand how they work together. Just today we're playing in a fall game against a team from Las Cruces, and I give the kid on first base green light. He doesn't run. The kid at the plate takes a fastball right down the middle because he knows that kid's supposed to run, and he didn't want to double him up with a pop fly or a
Yeah.
line drive or whatever, and we
Mm-hmm.
would have had the base stolen had he gone because the guy on the mound was a 1-6 delivery to the plate. So all of those
Oh,
things that I'm talking about are baseball things that people don't understand happens in a game. So then guess
right.
what happens? So then the kid decides to run on the next pitch, but the kid at the plate swings and hits a foul ball. So now the
Yeah.
kid doesn't go to second. He has to come back to first, and the kid at the plate, and then the umpire makes a call on a chest high fastball on him for strike 3. That's not a strike. And we put the game in the umpire's hand. And now instead of the kid being on third base with 1 out, he's on first base with 1 out. And we're behind 6 runs in the game. So we're not able to bunt or do anything to get him over. And so if you don't have those kids with you, when you get into Connie Mack World Series, like I told you, that thing's for blood. And if you get cut, it spills
Mm-hmm.
fast. And all of
Right.
those little things like that make a huge difference in a game. And if they don't
Absolutely.
understand that, you can't teach that in one weekend whenever a kid shows up from the East Coast or the West Coast or wherever to try to give you a better chance to win the games.
Nope. Right.
And so that's my answer to the question. It would be a nucleus with the kids that know me. And then we'll go into that Colorado area of kids that maybe don't
Mm-hmm.
qualify through the Mountain West Regional. And then we'll go into the Arizona region of the 3 high school baseball coaches in Arizona and so there's been a little more thought about it since the first call I got. Obviously, I'm giving you some of the details
Right.
of that. It's not going to be, I don't know the kids in Farmington. Those kids
Right.
already have coaches. I'm not interested in Albie called me and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, I don't think I'm the right guy for you to pair up with. I mean, what if the positions don't match? What if we have, 8 outfielders and 2 infielders out of our 2 groups of kids. Like, I'm not going to tell kids not to play. You're not going to tell kids not to play. Honestly, I
Right.
don't know what his kids know. I don't know what he would expect of me. Like,
Yeah.
I just told him, I said, I don't think I'm your guy. I think you should pair up with somebody who's a little more familiar with what you're doing. And he said, yeah, you're
Hmm.
right. But I also did promise him that I would help him with players any way I could, if they weren't
Awesome.
playing for me. And if I didn't,
Hmm.
have a team in it, I would definitely help them with players. And
Right.
I don't claim to have like bridges with people everywhere. And otherwise I would have brought those kids in, but I think I did as good as anybody has ever has up there as far as bringing kids in that can help us
Yeah.
win. And so if I can send a few, then I will.
Right. Right. And always a good man. Him and I we coached together against each other for years. Dude, he's a competitor. I'm a competitor. I always had the first place team. He always had the second place team. We always played in the championship games together. They never beat us in the championship game. So it was kind of this love, hate, respect relationship for many years. And then, of course, head of umpire. But man, he's a good dude. He's still coaching his son, of course, and Wyatt's a good kid. I stopped coaching, and to be honest with you, it was a point in my life. I love coaching. I wish I could still do it, and I probably could after my son graduates. But I feel like he got to a certain point where he was not developing anymore with me, so I feel like I wasn't positively affecting him in his baseball career, and I think that's just because, hey, Dad's saying it, not my coach is saying it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I got to
Oh
that
no, it
hurdle. I'm
helped
like,
when I went to La Cueva and Max played for Gerard Pineda and me as the assistant coach. There were a lot of things that were very beneficial for Max because I wasn't the head coach. I mean,
it's so
he
funny. I'm
had
like, I've been coaching this for 10 years, and you're now just
yeah
listening to him.
yeah
Whatever.
yeah
That part's it is what it is.
yeah.
I'm glad he's at PV. I think Crowley is doing an okay job. I don't think he pushes the kids as much as I would like. I think he's a nice guy and he teaches them fundamentals, but I don't know. I feel like it's just not. He doesn't have that X factor. He doesn't have that the edge, like you said earlier. I don't feel like he has that edge. I mean, he's a good coach, but he's not that guy that gets these kids over to that next level. And we have tons of talent coming through, great athletes coming through, but they're just not hitting that edge, just like you were saying earlier. And I feel like that 100% reflects a coach, but it also reflects, hey, is this kid willing to develop on his own as well, which is so tough to do because these kids don't know how to develop in a lot of areas, and because they just don't know because it's the first time going through it in their life. But there's so much access, via, I hate saying YouTube, but via YouTube and via everything else that, you can go down a good road or you can also go down a really bad road. And, looking at those certain things.
And both of my sons, the biggest thing that I would say is at that point in time in my career, I had already had all my success, really. I mean, I never had won a
Right.
championship while either of my sons were playing until we got to La Cueva and me and Max had that one, but me and Cody didn't win one together. And so the championships came before them. And so I always had their respect in terms of Dad really does know what to do, but the attitude
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
towards
with you, man.
towards the coach wasn't always on the up and up from
Yeah.
your own son,
Hmm.
because the other side of it is coach doesn't know when to turn coach off, and at home he's still being coach and he just needs to be dad, and the kid wants that.
Yeah.
And I failed at that
Yeah.
miserably, and I've apologized to both of my kids for that a lot, and thank God they've both forgiven me. I think, yeah, man, coaching your own kids, tough thing.
Tough. It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. I learned because my dad, he coached me until I was, I don't know, 12 or something, that kind of the same kind of thing. He coached me as far as he knew, like fundamentally wise to get me to that point. Then I played for other people. I played for Aztec, so keep that in mind. I had 3 home runs, a triple, and a double.
Hey, does that
So
even count if you went to Aztec? Was it as
I
Aztec
don't
High
know.
School?
Yeah.
I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Hey, I did lead the state home runs that year, and it wasn't Aztec. So if that gives you any, those bats were so freaking loaded in '99. Good gosh, man!
Hey,
Makes me
my
wonder if
favorite thing about playing at Aztec High School was every time everybody would just get quiet and still, and the game would just be kind of cruising along, and there wasn't a whole lot
right.
happening. You could go. hey. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
what? I'd be like, nothing, just
Point
that
at the,
truck of hay, hauling hay going by. That's like my favorite thing at
we
Aztec High
did that.
School.
Yeah, we did that a lot. We did that a lot. Thanks for Coach Carp. That was a Coach Carp thing.
Hey, it is what it
I'm
is.
pretty proud of it.
In the
It is
book, it
a,
might as well have been freaking Yankee Stadium, you know?
yeah, well, actually, Yankee was a little bit smaller. At that time, the left field was a little bit smaller
Fair
than
enough. Fair
than
enough.
Aztec.
That's a good point. I would have said Fenway, I guess, the 30-foot
Yeah,
fence. You can do
Fenway.
that in
Yeah.
Aztec.
So, anyways, just
Here's the other side of that too. And I mean, I'm going to make it specific to baseball, but when there's this many people that are up in arms about whatever it is that they're up in arms about,
Mhm.
whether it be because there's going to be a team in Mexico versus a host team, or there's not going to be, like whatever the dynamic of that is, when there's this
Right.
many people upset about it, you know that it's important. And
Mhm.
so, and if it's that important, then we should have conversations about it, and every angle
Right.
should be considered. And we really should, the collateral damage that it's causing and or not, like
Right.
what it's fixing, what it's going to cause. Like we need to look at all that stuff ahead of time. So I like
Right.
the fact that Richard left the door open to changing the format in the future, but I feel like there probably could have been a gap that was bridged that probably just was avoided altogether. And again, going back to the topic in and of itself, I mean, what better challenge to the local coaches and the local kids to step up their game? I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. I long for those like people that know me well know, like, man, if you challenge me with something, man, I'm gonna bring as much heat as I can. Like I'm gonna bring the juice if
Right.
there's
Right.
somebody challenging me because I'm not doing well enough. Like I'm that competitive. And so for
Right.
me, I mean, I feel like what a great opportunity for the local people that feel like something positive,
Mhm.
or not something positive, a better product could be put out there. What a great opportunity to go and
Right.
prove it.
Right. Nope. I think let them talk. Let them have conversation. I'm gonna hopefully they'll get a lot engaged with, selfishly my channel, but that's the whole point of me doing any of this is I want people to be engaged. Now, I was never thinking about it was going to be this particular topic, but
Right.
now that it is, I want people to be engaged because we get both sides, and I 100% agree. This is the funny thing. I'm 100% on both sides. I 100% agree on the AABC Connie Mack side of things and why he did it, but I 100% agree that we are hurting our local kids.
Yeah, man, that's the truth of the situation,
That's
honestly, for everybody.
I agree of both ways. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I literally agree. I want the best for our community, but I also want to put the best team on the field.